There are a million different things that are going to be a shiny object for you. And so, like, how do you actually go from that to, okay, I've purchased what I need. It's going to cost this much a month. I know that. Now I have my overhead expenses set, and I'm going to make sure to deliver to my clients through X, Y, and Z.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast, a show for business owners who set out to do something different and did not stop there. This is Derek DeLomo coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan, the city that inspired the name of this show. With over 18 years of experience in the financial industry, I've heard my fair share of success as well as horror stories in business. On this podcast, I enjoy sitting down with a variety of entrepreneurs to talk about what it takes to build a successful business, including all the ups and downs that come along with doing something different and paving your own way in life. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Jake Wagner, who runs a strategic growth agency firm called 4FP Agency, which is geared towards supporting financial professionals. Join us today as we discuss how he made his way into marketing and his heart for supporting financial planners and other financial professionals and their mission. Welcome to the show, Jake. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Really glad to be here too, Derek. Good to have a conversation with you today.
Absolutely. So, Jake, can you give us a little bit of your background? Tell us and our listeners a little bit about your story and what life was like before starting the 4FP agency?
Absolutely. So, a lot of my professional history has been in the financial planning profession, as well as living in Boulder, Colorado, quite a bit before I was in Portland, Oregon. And a lot of that was working for a variety of startups there that gave me both an expertise in one was a philosophical think tank, and another one of the major companies did data mining. So I was able to get into a lot of the technicals and what it meant to be in the startup world, and also worked for some startup RIAs as well, one of the first online registered investment advisory firms. And so, able to basically bring all of that knowledge together to what it is that I now offer to financial planners today.
Okay. And so I guess what made you want to start your own agency versus continuing to work for other startups?
So I was the manager, a manager of community relations for a company called My Financial Advice for about 5 years. And they were both in some ways before their time. I think if they tried to do something like this again, it would be a whole lot easier. And I would compare current companies, what they do. If you're a financial planner, you'll know what I'm talking about. Facet Wealth kind of does a similar model,
Okay.
as well as like NerdWallet had something like this for a while as well too. For the My Financial Advice version, it was independent financial planners all being listed on this one website and getting clients through that website. Um, it was a small team. I was basically the third wheel on a two-wheel operation. And there's a lot of things that they did right and also a lot of things that they didn't do right. And, part of my experience, I've been in the investor world a fair amount too. I've seen a lot of pitches and just I liked a lot of what they offered, and then also really thought that I had something that I knew how to put together that would be, something better and completely different. And that's what got me inspired to start my firm was as they shut their doors, I opened mine.
Perfect. So what did you come up with that is, I'm going to call it different and better to stake your agency on versus whatever was happening before?
Yeah, well, I mean, so that was a long time ago, and things have changed a lot. It's a part of that. So I started
The only
out.
guarantee in life, well, one of three guarantees, right? Death, taxes, and change.
Yes. And that was pretty much it. And so where I started was really doing a lot of like technical advising for financial planners, helping them with like different pieces of software, helping make their firm operations run better, that sort of a thing. And that morphed over time. And then about 2015, I moved to Portland. And also around that time, I learned about the group Digital Marketer. And at this point, we're certified partners with that group. But a friend of mine from that philosophical think tank that's called the Integral Institute, I saw him on one of the videos that was coming out for something from Digital Marketer, and I started talking to him about it. And basically, that was the beginning of a long love affair. And I worked with that group to get my certified digital marketing professional designation. And then a couple of years later, I was able to actually be a certified partner with that group. And so part of what that means as a company is that I was going from technical advising, moved into really what I call like a full stack marketing agency where you
Okay.
try to do everything for a client, which is also, frankly, a lot. And
Yes.
especially too much for a small team and hard for a team to do well as well. And so really from that, and especially through like what happens as you become a certified partner, that kind of moves where I'm best helping clients from, trying to make sure all of their email newsletters get written, their social media posts get out, like all of that stuff, to really being a fractional chief marketing officer and having teams that do all of that work, but also making it so that I can really be at that high level of advising and making it so that I'm getting the right people in the right places. That one of the things about marketing is that it has an indirect ROI. So, are you actually spending money on something that's making a difference for your business? And making sure that that is what's happening is a big part of what we do today.
Yeah, that's huge too, because
Yeah.
I mean, I think what the big buzzwords, at least that I see out there, are kind of like the what is it, DFU, so done for you, and DWU, done with you, et cetera. It sounds like you're more of a done with you you came from a done for you spot and are focusing more on the kind of done with you side to provide advice, strategic planning, et cetera, and then put the right people in place to help said business execute on those items that you have outlined from a digital standpoint.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And one of the parts of that is that also, like, when I'm working with people, a lot of it is in these specific workshop sessions that pull out a specific type of detail from the client. And basically, like every small business, especially financial planners, but really every small business owner, you have your unique flavor and vision that you're bringing to your company,
Yep.
and we want to preserve that, and we want to keep it like really tight and really good. And so what we want is the ability to have, like, here is the founder's vision on paper and documented, so that way when you go over to the next team, they know what to do. They know what
Yep.
success looks like. They have a series of topics that might be great. And also, especially in recent years with the advent of AI, one of the big deals with AI is garbage in, garbage out. If you just say, "Hey, write me a newsletter," it's who knows what it's going to write.
Spot
But
on.
yeah, but if it has context for this is who my ideal client is, this is the real difference that we make in their lives, these are our services, this is some of how people have really benefited, then, when you start to put that much additional context in, you start to get a great answer coming out the other end. And
Yeah.
people don't have to use AI. And, it's the same. It doesn't matter whether you're using a freelancer, an in person, in house, like staff member, or, an AI solution. Giving someone the right information so that they can do a good job is just the first step to actually making sure you do it really well.
And that's, I mean, that applies to every profession, right? It's like you provide the correct, I guess, all available relevant data sets to make a decision, because what's our goal, right? It's always to get people to make a decision, whether
Hmm.
you're in marketing, medicine, law, tax, finance, etc. It is to get people to make a decision that in theory betters their life. So it's
Yeah.
like, how do you do that? You have to have all of the relevant information to do that so that in theory you can make a decision based on logic, that we can verify with emotion because it makes us feel good, as opposed to making an emotional decision and cherry picking little logic data points that say, hey, see, well, no, you missed all these ones over here. But,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear you say all that because, in my career, I've tried, marketing firms out the wazoo, culminating most recently with a couple of years ago, a done for you marketing agency. It ended up being just a giant dumpster fire because, like you said, nobody could there wasn't a person that was being the puppeteer, making sure that everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing, nor was it written in my, I'm going to call it tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, when people ask me, like, oh, who are you? When, let's call it marketing or advertising, people ask me, who are you? It's like, I'm inappropriate and I use fuck as a comma, and I'm sarcastic as all get out. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, how do we put that together without offending people? I'm like, that's the joy of what I'm able to deliver, is that I can still, not offend you and tell you what you need to hear as opposed to what you want to hear, and throw in some humor along the way.
Yeah, well, and also if you're gonna, you're sharing your special spice,
Correct.
and a part of what that does is that allows like the people that you connect better on that front, like those are more likely to be the people who are great clients, and especially if they have the need of what you really do best, like then you're going to really be able to make those differences in their lives as well as having that personality match. And those two elements together is a large part of how I like to think about ideal clients.
Sure. So, how did you come to, I guess, focus on the drive to support the financial planning profession or the financial professional side of things, including insurance agents, financial planners, and I'm sure to some degree some, CPAs and tax firms, you know, how did you end up in that spot versus, I mean, the umpteen thousand other options in the digital marketing space?
Yeah, and also let's make sure to pull financial therapists into that mix
Financial
too.
therapist, correct.
But really that broader picture of people who help us understand the deeper nature of our money lives. And the short and long answer is I was raised in the financial planning profession, and my dad was one of the people who came up with the concept of life planning as an approach to financial planning,
Okay.
which rather than it being where you're trying to maximize the return for a person, you're really trying to help the person like make the life that they want to have.
Yes.
And that's the basis of where holistic financial planning has come from. And it actually was really like, I'd point, if I have to point to a couple of specific events, there was an FPA, Financial Planning Association residency that often happens in Denver, where I was born and raised, as well as actually a retreat in 2002, FPA retreat that I went to. And that was late 90s for the FPA residency program. And that's when I started to meet a whole bunch of Dick Wagner, my dad's friends, as well as like really starting to dive into the work by the time I was going to that fall retreat. And I started to see some of the profound ways that money impacted our lives. Like I remember going to, I don't even remember exactly what it was other than floofy, when I went to this event in Boulder, Colorado, and like it was a cool thing. It was about getting in touch with, I think, your inner feminine self, and it was really, it was a good event. And then, but I think it was the next weekend, I went and did a 7 stages of money maturity workshop, which is based off of the George Kinder, the other founder of Life Planning. So I think it was Courtney Pullen, who's an amazing psychologist who works with ultra high net worth. And I think it might have been my dad who facilitated the other part of it. And seeing the authentic tears that people had as they went through that workshop, and
Hmm.
seeing where it was this person talking about, and it's even easy enough to give the example, like 3 siblings went to dinner. This woman was one of them. And then at the end of the meal, the check comes. And the just question of how do you split up the check? And saying like maybe one sibling's doing really well, one's doing okay, and the other one, it's hard for them to pay their bills, shall we say. And, do you have it so that the person who's wealthy just picks up the whole check? Do you have it so that you split everything equally, which has a different burden on each one of those family members? How is it that you break up this bill? And then looking at the tears that this woman was shed, basically looking at some of the injustice that she really felt because she was able to look at her money life and look at how it related to her family dynamics in that way. Like that was something that just really made me understand how important this was, is also how weird we are all about money. I actually
Oh yeah.
did. So I went to a college, the College of Worcester in Worcester, Ohio, Wooster, not Pennsylvania or not Massachusetts at all. And we have to do a thesis as a part of our senior year work. And I did my thesis about people's attitudes around their perception of wealth and how that affected their money attitudes. And the one thing I can share with you for sure, Derek, we're all very different. Like
Very.
that is one of the things that like there are some other things that came up, and I wish I had a bigger data set. I've definitely shared this with some of the academics in the financial planning profession, like Derek Lawson, Wade Fow as well. And but if I had more people, I'd feel more sure a lot of those numbers. But the one thing I can say is that just everybody's attitudes were completely different. How do you compare your self worth to someone else because of your attitudes about money? Is money a good thing? Is money a bad thing? Do you feel like it's both good and bad or neither? And it was across the board. And I was really like a couple of years ahead of what we now call behavioral finance.
Yeah.
And some of that is just because of some of the circles that I was in at that time. But I've always thought that was fascinating. And I do really focus on the psychology of money a lot with the work that I've done. And we're all really weird about it. And it's not the most important thing in our lives ever, but it is a part of what makes these conversations possible. If I'm
Yes.
not paying for an internet connection, we aren't able to have this conversation. If the listener isn't paying for, their cell phone or their computer internet connection, they're not able to actually listen to these conversations. And just understanding how that important benefit in our life is made and facilitated by the fact that we can use money. And again, it's not everything, but it is a part of that commonality that makes it so that we have to pay attention to it. And it's a reality we must understand.
Yeah. And I would argue it's probably in the top two. 'Cause, I mean, it's like,
Hmm.
I went to school to become a physician. I grew up in a physician family. My dad was a doc, my uncle was a doc, and had basically grew up in the medical world. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be a doctor. Well, guess who didn't get into medical school? This guy. So it was like, okay, what can I do that kind of follows the same approach, of, okay, patient presents with X, all right, client presents with X. Here's the possible diagnoses and possible solutions. That it's kind of the same approach as, healthcare, which is also,
Hmm.
health and wealth are probably the two biggest things that people care about. It's like,
Well,
okay, if
body
you
it's
follow the same
body health
approach,
or financial health. They are
right?
different. They are both elements of health, just different capacities of
Yeah, yeah. So it's
it.
it's kind of weird. I grew up, I was what an early '80s baby. Um, got into the profession in 2006 when I'm going to call it behavioral finance was just in its infancy, right?
Yeah.
So, but that really resonated with me because of how I was raised, right? Of what type of, I'm going to call it, environment I was raised in. It was like, hey, yes, here's all the things you need to think about, but it's not always just here's one solution or one option. It's okay, here's what you've got. Here's vein one, vein two, vein three, vein four, all of which are possible, all of which have varying degrees of success or whatever else.
Hmm.
And that's kind of I see that approach being taken a lot more today than, 20 years ago. But I think it's better for the end client or consumer in the aggregate.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, even some of what you're talking about is what I talk about this very, very early on, like even,
Yeah.
pre-client with my prospects and clients, that if you are coming from a perspective where like you're really like pushing hard for the sale, other things like that, you can be in what we call a frame. Well, actually, you're always in a frame. Every dynamic, there's a frame that's going on. And if you come from the frame where you're a little bit more like that sleazy car salesman,
Yeah.
then as you approach somebody, that energy comes through consistently. And then actually what we advocate instead is the doctor frame. And it's exactly everything that you just said. When you go to your doctor, when they say what's going on with you, you don't question their advice. You don't, say like, oh, like you bargain with it or anything like that. You go and you get the prescription that they told you about. Maybe you're evaluating different options on how it is to do that approach, but it's not like, should I do this? It's how are we? These are the different ways that we can try to fix that, and going through that with the doctor. And like
Yep.
one of the things that I heard from you that you just said that I thought was really cool. Actually, you didn't say this, but it's a part of it. If you've got a broken arm, you need to put a cast on it, right? Like that's just what it is. But at the same time, like when we're talking to your financial planner, there can actually be a number of different ways that you can achieve the same desired end, like financial
Mhm.
result, and talking that through with your advisor so that way you understand what's going to work best for you in the big picture
Yep.
is huge. It's everything. And it's also something that you really need someone on the other side of the table that has the mind, they've got the training, they've got the heart. Those things go together. That a part of why we really ended up with, CFP as a designation. And part of what I know is a lot of history of the profession
Hmm.
just because of where I've come from. And, that we wanted to have, like, not just have to make someone go to their insurance person and then separately go to their broker, then separately go to, all the different, portions of their financial life. Like, let's get all of that in one person's head who can then also have the relationship with the client, who understands what they really desire and can start to like drive towards like, this is how you're really going to benefit from working with Derek and his team. Like that's bringing all of that together into one mind is everything.
Oh yeah. I mean, bringing that, having somebody, having somebody to quarterback something at all times, whether it is finance, health, marketing, etc. I mean, we're all playing the same roles, right? We're all playing the role of how do we get this done efficiently? How do we get this done appropriately? And how do we get this done in the best possible outcome for patient, client, customer, whatever, right?
Hmm.
So it's like that is only now becoming seemingly in like the late 2000, the late 2015,
Teens.
yeah, teens into the 2020s, like being like an actual thing now of like, oh, it's not so investment focused. Like, people are always
Yeah.
like, oh, I need to go and, talk to you about investments. I was like, yeah, okay. We also need to talk about this scroll of stuff. They're like,
Yeah.
well, I've got other people for that. I was like, yeah, but when was the last time you updated your will and power of attorney and trust? Well, I don't have one. You've got 3 young children.
Hmm.
Before we go any further, we're stopping this conversation and you're going to go talk to this attorney and you're going to deal with that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, boom. And now I'm getting a copy of that. They've got a copy of it. Everything's good. But, to kind of flip this around a little bit, you know, I've seen you kind of take the same approach on the digital marketing side or the marketing agency side. So can you walk me kind of through how, 4FP agency does that for financial professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one, we want to be offering people the series of tools that they really need. And that's also not too much. That's a huge portion of it. Like if you try to offer everything and do everything for everybody,
Nothing's going to
you
get
end
done.
up nothing's going to get done and you're not really serving the person at all. And so a big portion of how we work with our clients is to really like make sure that we're understanding what it is, who it is that they're going to work best with, figuring out how it is that that person's going to get to you. And then actually the third part of that is that we want to make sure that we're measuring the progress actually
Yep.
going on, because the thing is that when you have the right metrics, it's a lot easier to be like, where the problem is, frankly. And that sometimes it's easy enough to work on something that isn't working. It doesn't need to be improved, and that the actual problem is a little bit further down the line.
Yeah.
So, like, there's really two parts of this. One is doing more of a done with you program where we're helping people understand how it is that they're attracting their ideal client, what it is that that person really gets out of working with them, especially when you have the right advisor match, how working with that advisor isn't a nice to have thing, it's a need to have.
Yep.
And making sure that the advisor is actually creating an experience with their clients so that they're doing that. And a lot of our approach, we have three tools to the consulting process. And one is diving into who your ideal client is on a deeper level, not just the demographics. I don't hearing how someone's trying to work with pre-retirees somewhere aged between 50 and 65. Heard it a zillion times. It's
Right.
not moving a needle. And the other side of it is that especially if we are in the digital marketing world, that these social media networks know an obscene amount of information about us. That the last I heard from my friend Qasim Aslan was that Google had 70 million data points on each one of us. And that Facebook is at least in the five figures of the different things that they're watching about each one of us.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
when you start to dive in deeper into, Simon Sinek's why stuff and who it is that you're serving, what's the real transformation that's being provided, then that actually goes into your copy. It goes into what goes on your website, what goes into your newsletters, what goes into your social media posts, your ad campaigns. And therefore you can start to making sure that what a good advertisement is to me is when you get your message in front of someone who needs your help and make it so that it probably needs to happen multiple times as well.
Hmm.
But getting your message in front of someone who needs your help so that way they can move forward. I don't think what a bad advertisement is what we see on TV, especially a lot of the time right now, where they're going and it's some
Political.
well, you know, hopefully
Just
that's
kidding.
going to be over by the time this recording's out. That's for
True.
sure. But yes, and then also like some weird drug ad, that applies to like 0.002% of the population, but costs $50,000 a month, so they can afford the ad spend. You're seeing a message that is irrelevant to you. That I don't have eczema or whatever, and it's great for the person who does have that problem who gets connected. It's a good ad for them, but for the other 100,000 people that saw that ad, it was absolutely irrelevant. That we want to get a message in front of someone who needs your help at the time that they need it, so that way they have a way to like raise their hand and say, yes, can you please help me? And the more specific that you can get your message down into the details right there, the better that's actually going to like show up for the client.
Yeah.
So that's all on the ideal client front. And the second portion of what's the ideal client front is to understand what is the real difference that you make in their lives. And for a financial planner, it can be what you said a minute ago, Derek, of like before everybody knows they should make a will, and no one wants to do this because like facing your death is one of the hardest things that we have to
It's a
do in this
morbid
world. And
conversation.
yeah, and also facing our long-term money realities is just about as undesired as well.
Yep.
Like getting into the meat of that is something that's really hard for people. And so when you have a good advisor, then we can actually go and like when you make sure to get that done for your client, a part of what you just did is that you made your services be that need to have, not the nice to have. So now the client knows that you got their back and that you understand the situation that they're in, even better than they do.
Yep.
And that's everything right there. And so, like, not just what do they have before and after, now they have a, properly risk profiled, diversified stock portfolio, and maybe also that you help them with their employee benefits or get the right insurance, like set up going for them. Those things are all great, but like, how do they feel different because they've done that work? How is their average day different now that they know that they're covered? Because also when it gets to that critical moment where you need that stuff, that's where the differences show. When
Yeah.
when that God forbid moment, as I like to call it, it's a wonderful catch-all for these types of things. It's always the appropriate thing to say. And when the God forbid moment happens, and those living will directives those, like what's supposed to happen and having that actually be spelled out for the person and, their spouse, because it's very rare to die at the same time.
Yeah,
And so, making it so all of that stuff is there and on hand and that there's a program for it is worth everything. And the
yep,
person who has walked along with those clients the entire way, walked that path, made sure that they're where they want to be, like that is one of the most valuable roles that someone can have in their
for sure. Because I mean, that's, we've talked about it a lot already, the emotional aspect of it. It's like the more emotion that you can remove from any situation, I think the better, because
lives.
it's like, generally speaking, people make the wrong decision when emotion is involved. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
if you've done all the things to remove emotion from a situation before it happens, even though it may never happen, once that God forbid moment does happen, you've removed as much emotion as possible to say, here's what's going to happen. You've removed all the hard work for the person that has to deal with it, and they just have
Yeah.
to follow a set of instructions.
Well, and I'd actually even say, Derek, I'd change it just a little bit and say uncoupled the two. Because
Exactly.
the
Yep.
thing is that then you can have the stuff that has a deadline, the stuff that's legal, stuff that requires paperwork that can follow the program that's already been set up, which also leaves it so that no that
You have the
spouse is,
time to grieve.
yeah, having the time to grieve, having the ability to take that step back so that they can go through that mourning process and have it be everything that they need it to be while the other stuff is happening on the other side. I think that's a part of what's really, really important in the process.
So, you've been involved kind of in the financial planning profession, I mean, your entire life. Obviously, your dad, he was a lawyer and a CFP. He pioneered a lot of things in the financial planning industry. And you've kind of taken that kind of next step into the digital age of the financial planning profession, which, some people love, some people hate. I get it. Um,
Hmm.
but, as you look kind of back at your career arc, what would you say have been some of the best things to come out of your work?
Oh man, good question. Um,
Because you see it from a
so
lot of different angles, right? It's
yeah,
like,
I do. Yeah, I mean, so and you also asked about from my work. So like even
right,
just like a little bit to take it to like the work of the profession, because I think that that's really important to know is that how many more people understand and recognize what it means for someone to be a CFP, like the marks are so much more recognizable by the common person than they were 20 years ago. 20 years ago it really felt like the CFP board was having every CFP, a part of what they needed to do is champion the marks. And so as they're going out there and sharing and getting their clients, that sharing of the marks was something that was really important. And I've seen various ways that this has gone over the years where, like, but, the TLDR of it is the client doesn't actually necessarily care. What the client cares about is that being helped, and that's happening more and more. I'd also even go to details for like folks that are more in that like Gen X period that we're both like on the cusp of.
yep,
The Gen Xers are less likely to own a house, less likely to save for retirement. The effective boomers staying in the workplace longer than previous generations, how that's actually affected them is huge. And then going over to the millennials that are saving and that they are like actually making sure to prepare for retirement while they're in their 20s, which is like the most important part of financial advising. When we're looking at whether you have a financial planner or not, taking advantage of the rule of 72 and making so that you have more time for your money to double as it gets into retirement years, that is huge. And
yeah,
making it so that people are actually that much more prepared, that is everything. And then when I take it over to our work, it's really for me, it's the joy of when a client when an advisor, sometimes because they're my clients and they've got their own clients, sometimes this gets a little weird. But when they're able to really be routinely, predictably, and reliably attracting the kind of folks that they want to be working with, that a lot of what happens is that, like, what we encourage our planners, the people that we work with, to do is to say, like, this is how many people you want to work with. Great, let's get to that number. And then also, as you're going to that number, sometimes you get that like $5 million client. Those guys are great. And then sometimes you're also making sure to help their sibling who has no assets, or different people who aren't as ideal of a client. And just getting to the point where you're refining your practice and you're making sure that you're really serving the people who are going to get the most out of working with you. And then as other folks come in, other referrals come in, the rest of it, that you have, like, either you serve them or that you have like someone else who that's actually the appropriate place in the market for them, and having those folks serve them as well. Not everybody has a $500,000 saved, or $2 million saved, depends on the firm and their minimum. So having like that hourly planner or something like that you refer folks to, who you also have vetted and trust, you know so that way you're actually helping as many people as possible get the financial advice they need. Like, that, to me, that's the best, because, like, some people want to be running $1 billion AUM firm. And then there's also some parts of the mechanics with that. Yeah, notice if you're only on the audio, Derek's nodding no. And it's because, like, there's, if you're going to love your clients, which is what I hope, for the people that I work with, then there's going to be a certain limit, that there is your Dunbar number. And that's how many people that you can actually have in your life that really, like, that you have a relationship with. And, like, one of the things that, Derek, I think you can do with the career that you've chosen versus the one that you could have been in, and this is part of how I talk about it with other people too. Like, you'll have like, if you have the right number of clients, then you understand what's going on with them. You go, it's what's going on in their lives, and you don't need to play any catch up. Maybe you have some CRM notes that you look through. Like, that's all good to have. But, like, we've all had that moment where the doctor comes in and you can tell that they just, like, looked over your chart for maybe 20 seconds before they came in the room. They're trying to do something that's a little bit more like that personal connection, but they missed the boat, because, like, it just, you can't read 20 words and be caught up on a person's life. And fortunately, with a doctor, you're there because, like, your blood pressure's too high, or your kidneys hurt, or whatever. Like, you can get onto the problem at hand. That's why you're there. And the thing with financial planning is it's never that simple. Like, as we were talking about before we started recording the call, is how pervasive money is as a force in our lives. And so, the more that your financial planner can actually help you with that, the more they're actually going to be able to really, like, give you the best work possible and really be that role of true advisor in your life.
And so would it be, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong here, but would it be correct to say that kind of the focus of your firm is putting the correct advisor with the correct client?
That is exactly it. Yes.
So it's placing those, instead of, let's say, working with a $1 billion AUM firm who doesn't give two shits about you or your family, versus, okay, now you're working with, John Smith, who's got a 150 client practice. He knows everybody in their family, 2 generations either side, has birth dates, knows where kids went to college, knows who they're married, whatever, at least has some type of personal connection to that client. It's generally, people are going to work better with somebody that they can, know, like, and trust, right? It's those 3 things: know, like, and trust. You can't build trust in a rat race. You can't
No.
know and like somebody without spending time with them. Time in my world is the most valuable commodity, I think, in all of our worlds, right? Whether we
Absolutely.
realize it or not. It's like, okay, if we have more time, then we can divvy that up into the things that we want to spend time with. And that's on both sides of the table, right? It's like,
Hmm.
okay, I have now more time to spend with, these 150 clients, and if I want to take on another one, okay, that takes away a little bit of time from everybody else. But now it's this other person who needs that type of, guidance, empathy, direction, etc. Um, it's a very it's a thin line, let's put it that way, because
Hmm.
you know your agency has placed itself in a world that I still believe is oversaturated. Finance, real estate, law, and tax are four very oversaturated marketplaces. And, you're right in it. So
Hmm.
how does, 4FP agency kind of say, well, I guess we've gone through it, identifying, clients and advisor styles, ideal client, advisor style, connect those people. You've been involved in this, I guess, from pretty much before it was a thing. What's been the hardest part about bringing that to mainstream market today?
Um, well, one, a lot of it I think is really getting to the limited numbers. And also you did really like actually recapitulate our mission.
Okay.
That is what the mission of the company is that there is what I believe is a pandemic of need of financial advice, especially as boomers get close to retiring and they've been able to do whatever they have in with their lives. And the truth is their earning years, most of their earning years have already happened.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we want to be connecting the right advisor with the right client, and that's on a personality level, that's on a services level. And when you can get that person who can really help you, like that is everything. I would like a lot of it is that there is a certain limit to how many people that an advisor can actually be able to give that thought to.
Very much
And
so.
I'm also very time centric, and I've actually done the math. I don't know if you have, but if you take 7 times 24, we get 168. So I've talked about 168 hours quite a bit. But if you do that next multiplication of 60, we're all equally rich with 10,080 minutes in a week. And so, how is it that we leverage that? And so, to me, and I'm also trained in a paradigm called spiral dynamics, which is a way that we understand how values evolve.
Okay.
And work of a guy named Don Beck and uh, Claire Graves was the person who did these statistics back in the 60s. And he and Maslow would be hanging out at the I don't want to talk to those people table at all the APA conferences, apparently. Um, but when we're looking at from that perspective, like how do we actually like connect the advice to the person who needs it the most? Like there is a place, there's actually a seminal moment in my dad's career where he broke away from an RIA that he was working with because they wanted to go more numbers and he wanted to go more helping people with their individual lives. And you can do either. It's just about how much service can you offer,
Right.
and if you're going to offer more numbers, part of what that means is packages. It means, trying to find ways to multiply that effect so that you can save people time. And with his approach to work, it was really about being able to dive in deep and help the client understand what is the difference that they want to make in this world. If you have, let's say, $5 million and one kid, and that one kid doesn't need all of the money, and that there's actually this is a way to both, when you're talking to your properly trained certified financial planner, they'll talk to you about tax loss harvesting, charitable giving, charitable remainder trusts, other things like that, and that you can go and like whatever that client's passion is, like we can go and actually start to use that money to make the difference that they want to see in the world.
Yep.
And to me, that's the crux of it, and that's like some of the best help that can happen there. Um, and I'd say some of the challenges are really helping like the folks that I'm working with understand like what is different about
Yes.
this approach. That even down to like, there's some like, is leads a 4-letter word? Is a part of what you're doing actually objectifying your potential client? Because, like, ultimately, you want to be working with this person. Like, a part of what we talk about is we want you to be having clients that are going to stay with you for decades, not a year or two. And that's even, more than a couple of months or something like that. That when you have that know, like, and trust with your advisor, like, they're your people. And the same thing happens over here with me, where when you get to a certain point in relationship, whatever's going on with the business, there's different times like it's time to call Jake,
Yep.
and having it so that you have that relationship so that you can give that support. And just something that's always been a little bit, I think it might be more of a personality thing than like, something specific about how to apply the tools. But like, I like it when there's advisors who are really living into that purpose of the profession and really like caring about their clients, making sure to do like that extra amount of fiduciary duty.
Hmm.
And, if what someone's really trying to do is how many folks can I get through this year? How many financial plans can I write? How big of an annual revenue can I build for myself? Like, that's a bit of a turnoff for me. Like, those things are important. Like, it is, we are here, we're doing this good work because we want to be bringing the money into our lives so that we can make the lives that we want. But we're not here to work, we're here to live. And,
Right.
understanding how to find that balance and have the maximum impact in our professional world while we can then go and, make sure to be at our daughter's baseball game or whatever it is that you have there, but making it so that you can have that life that you want to live and not having it be like too much work. And Derek, tell me if this topic is okay for our recording, but the CFP board ad campaign.
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you like who are receiving the benefit of financial advice and you're in that market, I actually really love these ad campaigns that the boards put out. They have like this person's in with the surgeon and that the surgeon is going for the wrong leg to go under surgery. And there's another one about a guy who's going to go bungee jumping, and that it's really clear that plenty of the safety mechanisms are in the middle of failing as this advisor is going to push them off a cliff. And that those are the reasons you don't want to be in that situation. So make sure to talk to a CFP professional because they are trained. They've taken a fiduciary oath. They've passed tests. They make sure to do continuing education so that way they know everything that you might know to make sure that you're safe. And that stuff is great. And that is what I want the public to see. And then there's the other part that I just alluded to. And Derek's laughing. And I'll also tell you that at a conference that, Derek, you weren't able to attend, but we went to XY Planning Network conference a few weeks ago, and it's close to both of our hearts. And a member of the board showed up basically to eat crow. Like that was a part of like he's like,
Good.
this was bad that we paused these ads. And as a marketer, like I really liked a lot of what he had to say on a lot of it was apparently the static image ads were conveying something that offended a whole lot of
Yes.
financial planners. It was like pictures of bubble baths and other things like that on how it seemed like, oh, if you're going to be a financial planner, you almost don't have to work
Yeah.
was a part of the picture that was portrayed. And for every financial planner that's working their ass off, like that was a truly offensive thing that they said right there. And the people that are seeing this ad who are CFPs, they're like, dude, I'm putting in like 50 hours a week at least. I'm doing all of these over and above and beyond things for my clients to make sure that they're taken care of to the way that I truly think that they need to be taken care of. Like, frankly, you're showing me, like, no, I haven't taken a bubble bath in like 2 years. I do have, two kids that I'm making sure to get to school on time and like all these other things. And let's use these things as an example for our conversation, actually, Derek. Like, this is a really good example of like a bad image to try to give to folks
Hmm.
versus like this is the true after state of if you're going to jump off a bridge, you want to make sure the guy who's making sure that your bungee secure like that has every piece of safety that you could possibly want, all of the protections, so that as you put your life on the line, which, with a financial planner, you're putting the rest of your life on the line. It's no less serious of a situation, that they've done everything that they can possibly do to like make sure that you are going to be safe. And when you give the wrong image to people, like, one, it offended the professionals, and two, like, what do they're aiming this towards, like college grads? What do
Right.
those folks think? Like, if someone is attracted to what's being said there, what is the job that they think they're going to do? Like, do they understand? Like, no, it's not bubble baths. It is, I am protecting the life's dreams of my clients that they've worked for, 40, 50 years to have this save, to be able, they worked so hard to be able to talk to me. And so now me doing a good job means that I help protect that. And say they're 62 right now, like, let's make sure that they are prepared to be able to live till they're 90, 95. And then also, something financial planners almost all know, but not everybody does, is that, dying's really expensive.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
not just talking about the cremation portion, like that is also, it's like a $8,000 to $10,000 thing, just getting turned into dust right
And
there.
that's the cheapest portion of it.
Yeah, that's the cheapest part. That we end up spending half of what we spend in medical care in our entire lives in the last 6 months before we die, and it's a third in the last 3 months. So making sure that you actually are protected, that you have what you need, that's huge. Like, being in an old folks home can be like $120,000 a year. And
More
so,
than that.
like, hey, maybe my numbers are a little out of date on that one
I
too.
well, I mean, those numbers are probably from about 10 years ago.
Hey, that happens. That happens. I pay
It's
attention to a lot
I'm
of the details. So
I'm
yeah,
guilty of that too. It's like, oh yeah, it's $6,000-8,000 a year to be at the pavilions. No, it's 12 to
right.
14 now, and
Yeah,
that's what it is.
yeah, yeah. And also, we want to be paying those people properly. That these are, well trained healthcare providers that are also doing some work that's really hard to do. And if you are lucky enough to have the family structure where the elders in your family can actually like live in their house till the day that they die, blessings on you. Like, that is a really fortunate situation, and not everybody has that. It might be because the kids live in a different city. All sorts have to work, all sorts of different reasons. But making sure that the family can understand this is super important, because like, when that elder does actually get to that moment of retiring, they don't want to put their family in financial ruin for them doing one of those, one of the things you're required to do in this life. It's better to like, leave a little bit of money, not too much. Hopefully you got to take your trips to Greece and, whatever else, go and adventure the world and your retirement years. And, that you're not putting your parent or putting your kids into undue financial stress, as a result of
Yep.
doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's very. I mean, you mentioned traveling overseas because it also is cheaper to travel overseas than it is domestically right now. I mean, via airfare. But you mentioned the CFP ads, so some hits and some misses, right? Some good ones there. It actually happened as well with Intuit. So
Hmm.
the people behind TurboTax, QuickBooks, etc. You know, they just or stopped a campaign that created a whole bunch of uproar within the tax profession because they put out a campaign that basically said, we will beat whatever your prior tax preparer charged you in the year prior. And people are like, wait a minute, we're all supposed to be on the same team here. So the National Association of Tax Preparers, NATP, basically stepped in and wrote a sternly worded letter to Intuit and was like, look, you know, here is what this profession stands for. Here is kind of what the values of, and this is just the tax preparation side,
Yeah.
saying, you provide a tool, you're trying to grow that. We get it, but basically, until further notice, we are no longer going to be placing ads, with Intuit, so it was like, and Intuit, immediately basically said, you're right. They realized their mistake and pulled those ads down. I mean, it'll take them probably 2 months to, wind it all down. But it was kind of a realization like, hey, here's a good way to try to gain market share, but it was done at the expense of people who are paying them already. So it
And the
was kind of
profession and the purpose of the profession, what they did, was tarnish what it is that they do.
correct.
And I mean, and this is a part of why I like to work with smaller, more independent companies as well for like all sorts of reasons here. But I think that is where 80% of the jobs are made in small businesses.
Mhm.
By the time a company goes public, almost all of the job creation, other things like that are gone. And also, like Intuit works really hard to have like there should be free ways for a W-2 employee to be able to file with the IRS and have it be free because that is a
Absolutely free.
simple tax return and that they've gone through. This is just one of my problems with Intuit is like they make it so that like often someone will navigate the corridors of their program, which is a maze, as we all know, and it'll end up at that version of things where you have to pay, and that they actually truly hide how to actually do the free version of tax filing for people. But if you are, we're both business owners, it is more complex for folks like us. There is plenty of work on the tax return front that, needs a true financial professional. But if you work and are on salary for a company and like you don't have, the weighing of your car mileage against, like, and here's your meal deductions and other things like that. Like, if you don't need any of that, like, just, yeah, I think this is a part of the problem with as some of those corporations get bigger, that they can do what we were talking about earlier, and that every one of their customers, they're looking more at leads
Numbers,
and
yeah,
they're not
leads
looking at
before
that
reward.
life that's being lived.
Yep.
Yeah, and they're trying to do something. They're trying to get in more numbers. They're trying to, have results that show up in executive dashboards, and those numbers probably look good. But they're not actually doing matching that service of the profession, which is to make sure that like their clients are actually having the conversation, the report to the IRS about that person's personal finances that makes the most sense. Like there doesn't, and then there's also advisors who end up, they're doing their, it's especially early term advisors are doing, some side work with Intuit and getting in there one of the TurboTax advisors, like, so then there's that place where we're in there as well. And like, it feels like it's the waters are muddied is basically how I'm feeling with something like that.
Oh yeah, I think one of the best stances I've ever taken just in my career is that, people will always ask me like, oh, who's your competitor? Or who are your biggest competitors? And I'm like, nobody. I was like, we are all supposed to be on the same team. It's like our role is to, you know, provide the best service to that person sitting across the table, whether it's me, you, John Smith, Joe Schmo, whoever. It's like
Hmm.
whether they do it with me or you should not matter to me or you. It's like
Yeah.
the idea is that person gets, the right advice at the right time and does the right thing. Who does it is immaterial because, there's what, 330 or 350 million people in the United States. Let's just say half of them are, above age 18.
Hmm.
There is plenty of work for everybody out there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I like to call it a pandemic. Like, there are way more people that need your help than you can possibly serve with the bandwidth that you have. So if everyone is serving the people that work the best with them, and also, this is some of that power of niching as
Yep.
well. That by serving, like as you drill down and the nuance of this way for a person to work, like whether it's position or startup, or it can be, stage of life as well,
Yep.
then you start to know the deeper questions about what can show up there because of your experience. And that's a part of what really makes it so that you, as a business owner and as an advisor, can speak to your clients' needs better than they actually know them to be. And that's when you can really make some of that best difference in a person's life.
Yep. Because I mean, the one thing that's always true is you don't know what you don't know, but
Hmm.
a lot of people don't accept that. It's like, oh, you know, I know enough, or Google is out there, or AI is out there to try to give some type of context around it. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, that's true. The information is out there. Filtering out that information to usable data points is a much more heavy lift for, you know, John Smith versus, CFP. Same thing for
Hmm.
me, like looking at hiring somebody like you in the marketing space. Is all the information out there? Yes. Do I know what to do with it? Absolutely not. You know, I look for, a Jake Wagner to say, okay, Jake, here is who I work with. I've been in business a long time. This isn't new to me. I know all the components of the finance side. I have zero idea of how to take this smoothly operating machine over here and recreate the next client. It's like, I mean,
Yeah.
I do it by, getting introduced from my current clients being like, hey, that person needs your help. They're just like me. And it's like, okay, some of them work, some of them don't. It's
Hmm.
I take on some, I don't take on others. But, you know, I don't have a forward looking kind of marketing piece to say, this needs to get in front of this person at this time to then even have the opportunity to meet them without being introduced with a current client.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you are an expert in numbers, but it's a different type of numbers, and also you have all of the relevant data points around you. And that doesn't mean that but what you're going to be looking at are the numbers that you need to give to your clients because you're their advisor. And when I'm an advisor for someone like you, I'm saying, okay, that's great. Let's put each one of these numbers next to each other, and then we come up with the table where we're actually looking at the details that matter for you, and that I might be using, and I do use a similar framework with each client. But when we get into the nuts and bolts of it, like what it is that matters for each client and each
Mhm.
stage of development for them, like I want to use this proven methodology and bring it over to the client's world, the advisor's world, so that way it starts to line up. And also, where it doesn't start to line up is actually even some of the more valuable. Like I've had clients go through where we've adjusted targets both directions. Where it's when I was like, cool, great. Like this is a client who likes to use in-person networking strategies. And so they're going to like 4 to 6 in-person events a week, and they want to have a certain number of conversations at each one of those events. And that's part of what they're measuring for their success. And just realizing that the number of those conversations could easily be cut in half to just like,
Mhm.
and then they're going to be able to hit that quality, the caliber of quality that that advisor wants to have, as well as like how if he was focusing on that high of numbers that high up in the funnel, that actually takes away time, energy, in his personal, gumption to work and make sure to have the conversations further down the funnel where like going out to this many networking meetings has all that, like, then is he having enough like short 15-minute conversations with the prospect to be? Is he actually having enough so he can qualify? Does that, if he has fewer conversations of a better quality, then is he going to actually have that many more introductory meetings?
Right.
And being able to have that so that we have a spreadsheet where we're looking at it and then someone like me looking over his shoulder to say like, hey, have you looked at it this way? That is a part of the real difference that we can make in the lives of the planners that we work with.
This is all very interesting and so foreign to me at the same time that it's like it gets repeated to me all the time, and I don't have a grasp on it. It's like you would think, right? After 18, 20 years in the business, you're kind of like you have a good grasp on this, the marketing component, etc. Nope.
Hmm.
I can raise my hand right now and honestly say I am no better a marketer today than I was, when I graduated college.
Hmm. Well, and it's also how many new relationships do you need? And
Yes.
like some of that, there's folks that like just, if you want one client a quarter for a year, maybe just relying on referral marketing will do it. And also, you are doing that version of marketing with the referrals. Making sure to not be shy with clients and say, I do appreciate when you give me an introduction. Like, that is marketing. I've had friends who exited businesses and thought that all they did was sales and not marketing. And it's like, no, no, no. Like, how I like to think of it is that, like, marketing is the let's do marketing is the left hand and sales is the right hand, because the marketing gets out there and creates awareness with somebody to set up that sales conversation. And then the sales is the side that closes everything. But you don't have anyone to close if you didn't make it so that someone was actually aware of the business that you run and the difference that you might make in their lives. Like, without those steps, if someone doesn't, know they have a problem and then decide that you're the person to help them solve that problem, you don't have another client. You need to complete each one of those steps, and we need to, like, make sure to walk someone through that journey too. That's why I call it a client value journey that someone goes through. Because if you skip a stage, you might be able, go quick on one, but if you skip too much, that's when you alienate somebody.
Yep.
It's when you don't have that right personality match. You don't have the know, like, and trust set up, and that's when things fall apart.
I think one of the best realizations or pieces of advice that I ever got was, I always would say I'm allergic to sales. I don't like selling anything. I think logic drives all those decisions, right? So it's like, provide the value, provide the answers, it will be purchased, right?
Mm-hmm.
So looking back on it, that is sales, even though it's not here's all the benefits, blah, blah, blah. You need to come buy this. Here's how it's going to do. Here's what it's going to do for you. It was like everybody in every profession is always marketing and selling themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
once I kind of accepted that, I was like, okay, like, what is your sales process? Okay, my sales process is a value-based, sale, provide the value, almost like a field of dreams. If you
Yeah.
if you build it, they will come, and it's worked. It takes a long time, but it's resulted in the correct client, the client that stays for 20 plus years. And I'm not worried about other people trying to take my clients, right? It's like, it's created that long-term shelf life for my business. And, that was all based on the realization that you are always selling and always marketing. Everybody's going to do it differently, but, yes, Derek, what you do is sales, even though it's never selling a product,
Mm-hmm.
it's selling yourself and your expertise and your process.
And you being an advisor as well. And some of this is what is required to, like, especially referral marketing, the background, the ground floors of that. Because, like, so our approach is based on the stages how we become more intimate with each other in life. The full version of that does end in what we call baby making as 12 stages of intimacy. We ported 8 of them over into the business world. And the last 2 of those are around referral. And it's someone your advocate, where if someone says, hey, I need help, who do you use? Then your client says, well, like, Derek's been great to me. Here's his number. Like, let me introduce you. Let's go talk to him. And then the last one's promoter, someone who shouts from the rooftop saying, like, you need to use this person. Maybe that's like an estate attorney who,
Yep.
actually sends you referrals and pieces like that. But, like, what's it isn't, no, like, and trust is a great start. Having it so that you can have a good relationship, be friendly with a person, that is the basis of a great relationship. But also, what creates a referral is that you do an incredible job and that you save your client money and that you make your client money. When you can
Correct.
do both of those things, then they're going to be really set up to do that referral. And that's what you're saying, is that however someone came through the door, great. And let's make sure that they know, like, and trust you. And then you also make sure to deliver and over deliver, so that way, when it gets to that referral point, you know what to do and you can hand it over to into the referral marketing process,
Hmm.
and, like, delivering, like, a great salesman still can't sell a bad offer.
Right.
When you do your work well, that's when it makes it so that, and a horrible salesman can still sell something that's great. So, like, that's when you can get it even. I'm not saying you're a horrible salesman. I know you're not. I know that. But, and we can make it so that when you're not concentrating on that as much, that you still end up having the right person come over, and that
Yeah.
it's not lipstick on a pig. It's no, we make fine tuned race cars or retirement vehicles for our clients that support them as they go through the turns, make sure they have what they need to make sure to, make it through that corner and be set up in the right spot for that next thing that's going to come down the line.
Yep.
Like that. And when you do that well, that's when people share the word about you. And that's when referral marketing really kicks into high gear.
Yep. So, let's consider, or I guess let's imagine for a minute, that I am, you know, early to mid 20s, kind of, looking, let's say I've started a career, but I really want to I have the entrepreneurial bug. I want to be my own boss. I want to do my own thing. What advice, generally or very specifically, would you give, we'll call them an aspiring entrepreneur, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to focus on whether they're launching or thinking about launching a business?
Um, Doubling down on what we were just talking about and work on your offer. First and foremost, the offer, when you have a great offer, that will naturally create great results for the people who take you up on that offer, which sets you up for success. It isn't about knowing, this strategy or technique, or, that's something you'll hear when you talk to like other marketing agencies, is that no, you just need to make these Facebook ad campaigns. We're going to run this for you. We'll write all the copy. You don't have to lift a finger. And then, well, Derek,
While
you tell
appealing,
me how the results of that happened, because
I'll tell you, you
big
could blow
waste of
through 200
money.
grand real quick.
Yeah. And so, like, if you don't know if you're cutting a trail in the right forest, that is when you end up having a problem. So, like, and also having a way to filter through all the shiny objects.
Hmm.
Because especially when we are in the digital marketing world, there is so many things that are being evolved at once. And now we have these new AI buzzwords, not like it wasn't already complicated enough, but now I think there's like three AIs that are just for taking notes for client advice or meetings. And some of that
Yeah.
has to do with security and privacy, but like there's in compliance needs. But like, when you look at the software that serves the fintech landscape, let's just say you need like at least a magnifying glass and not a microscope to zoom in on each one of those things. And so, like, there are a million different things that are going to be, a shiny object for you. And so, like, how do you actually go from that to, okay, I've purchased what I need. It's going to cost this much a month. I know that. Now I have my overhead expenses set, and I'm going to make sure to deliver to my clients through X, Y, and Z. And and that could be this can be a financial planning practice. It can also be like a restaurant.
Yes.
Like this applies to all of businesses. That I'll tell you, here in Portland, we have amazing food. And so, like, if we're going to talk about what that offer to focus on first would be, it's going to be your menu. Because, like, if you have mediocre food and you start a place in Portland, Oregon, you're going to go out of business. And because every place has amazing food. So, in order to actually be in the ranks, you have to have, know what your offer is that's great to start. And then you can actually take it from there. And then, location, location, location. That's going to be a part of it as well, all of that
Always.
stuff. But like, what do you make sure that you're offering the right thing? And I'll also actually have to say, right on top of that, the reason to laser point onto who your ideal client is and the reasons why their lives are different, because they've worked with you and they've gone through your process, they've eaten your pulled pork, whatever it happens to be. Then you've made that difference in their lives, and that can kickstart the rest of it. Um, Other important details, measure. Like as a marketer, on the sales side, it's ABC, always be closing. On the marketing hand, which because you do always need to be closing, also always be testing. Like let's look, and you don't know until you put that, $250 into a Facebook ad if version A or version B are going to work better. And version A, like it's not necessarily the pretty one. Like that's something why you always want to back this up to the numbers, as there are, especially in like old school like ad campaigns that ran in the magazines for 30 years and stuff like that. The ugly one might be the one that wins. Fretting about all of those details, trying to have everything like you want everything to have like the scent of your brand. It's really good to have like a set of colors, have your logo, have things that make it so people know they're in the right place. Like that's really important. But also like you want to test. You want to be like, is this the reason, the hook that gets someone through the door, or is this other reason? And trying both, see what it is that works. Like that, I think is what's the most important, because like if you can get out there and you can get some of those results, then you can iterate and you can improve on those results. If you're always trying to just make something be perfect, you can get stuck in a paralysis right there, in a paralysis of perfection, paralysis of analysis. So getting out there, really doing the work, getting some results so that way you can give yourself an informed decision, that makes all the difference in the world. So when you have that great offer, and then as you go out and see what people actually care about with that offer, I think that is the gold in the pager.
All very, very, very good points. And it's like, I think at some point I'm going to have to go back and like put all these podcasts into Otter or some other transcription service and have it make a summary of points, because it's amazing how in each different varying profession, a lot of these things are very similar. And, refining your offer, measuring and all the things that you just brought up are, I mean, they should be, if they're not already known, they should be known as kind of key points for business ownership.
Yes, absolutely. And like,
that doesn't just apply to the startup either.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, it even encourage people to think about the life cycle of the business. That also the skills that it takes to start a business are different than the skills that it takes when that business is really hitting its prime time. Like that's really important. And then a lot of what I've been sharing over the course of this podcast are things from digital marketer. And I'm working with financial planners, and I understand the financial planning world and the compliance concerns, other things like that, in ways that other people won't, just because of that background. But, every business is going through their own corporate life cycle, that every business needs to have, new customers, and that a lot of the different tools that we've been talking about apply to everybody, especially the stuff that I've learned from DM. That, this is how business works, and that business is built on great relationship. And when you make that difference in a person's life, they're going to love you for it, because you actually made their life better. So like, if you're not a financial planner, like every single piece of this still absolutely applies to you too.
Definitely. All right. Well, Jake, we usually end every episode by giving our guests a few minutes to kind of leave a message to our listeners, and whether that's to offer advice, discuss what you care about, expand on personal experience, whatever comes to mind. It's time for you to have the floor and give our listeners a little bit extra of what Jake Wagner and 4FP have to offer, and also how to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So let's start with the get in touch with you part. My website is 4fp.co. It is the number 4fp.co and not com, because that was bought by someone else a long time ago. So 4fp.co. And really, where I think that I want to leave listeners is, making sure that I encourage you to have a plan. That ironically, 83% of financial planners don't have a marketing plan. They have no idea how they're doing it, and it's just, and they're winging it. Yep, that's part of why we've been chatting. And then also with that plan, to make sure to have meaningful metrics. There are way too many dashboards out there way too many numbers. And so what I want you to do is make sure to be monitoring the meaningful metrics. That we want to know what it is that's making a difference for you and for your business. And so when you have your marketing plan, like how is it that people learn about you? And as they're learning about you, how do you differentiate yourself versus the people, down the street? Because I absolutely agree that a financial planning practices aren't necessarily in competition with each other. Everyone has their sweet spot, and if you can refer the folks that aren't perfect to the someone else's sweet spot, like that is the business that we're trying to get to. And then lastly, that you have a way that your best clients are finding you, and the more that you can systematize that, the more that you're going to be able to have your growth be predictable and reliable, and actually having a client acquisition system or a customer acquisition system, whichever one's more applicable to you. And then I think I'd actually like to say last, make sure that you have the right tools to get the job done. And part of that is having the right advisor, whether it's having Derek as your financial advisor, me as your chief marketing officer, or whomever else that is really like the right person for that need. Having that person be there, and knowing that that person is going to make you the hero of the story, that they're going to make it so that your success is what they desire, and having a person like that at your side is huge. And along with it, having the right tools, making sure to have the right tools in place to do that job. I have a software that's called 4FP High Level that you can Google and find that, and it's a marketing all-in-one. But like, if you don't have a way to turn someone who doesn't know you don't know their name, if you can't turn that person into an actual name, phone number, and therefore a conversation, that's going to fall dead.
Yep.
And so making sure to have something at each one of those places so that you can actually nurture as much of that client life cycle as possible. And then to put some of that time back in your week, leverage automation, but don't rely too much on the AI stuff, because garbage in, garbage out. You want to make sure that it actually knows enough about you, and that you're reading everything that you put out there that's a part of your digital presence, a part of your marketing presence online and offline. I think all of that's just mission critical.
And yeah, and as we all learn more about this, I mean, I think that's got to be the standard. It's like, I see so many things like, oh, go into Chat GPT and write this in 100 words or less and blah blah blah. But it's like, oh, that's actually based on 2021 numbers. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's like you got to go in and edit the garbage that you put in there to make it actually usable in today's marketplace.
Yeah. And if what you need to come up with is, 52 text messages, having an AI get you off of that blank sheet of paper saves many, many, many hours. But
Absolutely.
at the same time, like, I think copy editing for me is like at least 2/3 of the writing process. That did not change because you got some sort of writing assistant. And like, have your flavor, what you care about, and having all of these things documented as well. So whether it's a freelancer, AI, whatever else you use 3 years later when you forgot what you really cared about, making so that you have that documentation there to lean back on to create that consistency, that also really helps.
Perfect. Well, thanks a ton, Jake. Well, as you all know, my name is Derek DeLomo. I'm the owner of both Tremonti Financial Consultants and Tremonti Tax Solutions, together referred to as Tremonti. Tremonti bridges the gap between financial advisors and accountants by serving as CFO to our clients. We specifically love to work with business owners to develop a proactive tax strategy that maximizes after-tax profits. It's our job to help you earn more, be more efficient, grow faster, and pay as little in taxes as legally possible. If this idea piques your interest, please go to TremontiTax.com and click on the Schedule Now button to book a 15-minute chat with me. Whether we end up working together or not, I'd love to hear from you. With all that said, Jake, it was really good talking to you today.
Yeah, this is an honor and a great conversation.
For those of you listening, if you enjoyed today's episode and had a few helpful takeaways, we would love for you to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and share this episode with other business-minded friends. This has been another episode of the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast. We had fun today and hope you did too. Thanks again, Jake, for being here, and thank you for tuning in and listening.
Take care, everyone. Bye for now.
This podcast is presented by Tremonte Financial Consultants, LLC. The firm is registered as an investment advisor and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability. The information presented is believed to be current. It should not be viewed as personalized investment advice. All expressions of opinion reflect the judgment of the presenter on the date of the podcast and are subject to change. You should consult with a professional advisor before implementing any of the strategies discussed. Content should not be viewed as an offer to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned or as legal or tax advice. Always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation. Different types of investments involve higher and lower levels of risk. There is no guarantee that a specific investment or strategy will be suitable or profitable for an investor's portfolio. There are no assurances that a portfolio will match or exceed any particular benchmark. All investment strategies can result in profit or loss.